Good afternoon and welcome to In Conversation With. This segment is specially designed to showcase the backstories and journeys of individuals who have made an impact in their respective fields of expertise. Luminary Learning Solutions crafted this segment to offer you the advantage of drawing inspiration for your own personal journey. I'm Anton Thayalan, the Chief Evangelist and co-host this hour. And I'm being joined by our founder and destiny architect, Vidusha Nathavitharana, the host for the afternoon. And together we will take you through an hour of free-flowing discussion. For today, we are in conversation with Reebok founder, now retired, Joe Foster, who covers the growth of Reebok from a small family business to the global brand as we all know and love. A little bit of background before we get into our conversation with Joe. So Joseph William Foster, or Joe Foster, was born in 1935 in Bolton, England, with the same birthday on 18th of May as his grandfather, also known as Joseph William Foster. Joe's grandfather was the founder of J.W. Foster and Sons, the Athletic Shoes Limited, and the inventor of the spiked running shoe and the trainer, also known as sneaker. Joe and his late brother Jeff were born into the J.F. Foster and family business, but on their return after 2 years away from home on national service, they asked questions. The year was 1955, and the brothers saw a business still rooted in the 1930s. Their father and uncle were now operating the business, and very much like another sports shoe company, spent more time feuding than collaborating. The result was in 1958, Joe and Jeff left the Foster business to set up a new sports shoe company. The brothers founded Mercury Sports Footwear, which after 18 months, they changed its name to Reebok. By 1965, Joe was on his way to NSGA, or the National Sporting Goods of America show in Chicago, which was the start of many global adventures and experiences that after 15 years brought him together with Paul Fireman and later many stars of film and television industry. As the surviving founder of the Reebok brand, Joe still welcomes the opportunity to travel and recount those early stories from startup to taking the company to a 4 billion business, overtaking Adidas and Nike to become the world's #1 sports brand. On that note, a very good afternoon or good morning to you, Joe, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Anton. I don't think I have anything to say now. That was the story. But yes, thank you. It's nice to join you today.
Thank you, Joe. I've heard a lot of stories, and we've been following you, and we've been excited to have this conversation with you. And I kind of want to take a slightly different route before we dive in. We talk about passions, and I want to talk about one of your other passions. And from a little bird that gave me a little tip off that said, you have a huge passion for coffee, and you are an excellent barista as a result of pursuing that passion. I guess my question to you as the entrepreneur is passion enough to become or to get an entrepreneurial or to get to the entrepreneurial heights that you have reached? Or is passion just a component of that journey?
Well, it may be probably it's the most important component, because you can learn many things about a product, how to do this, where to get things from. But you can't substitute passion. Passion is something that is a feeling, it's an emotion. And you can't just say, well, I'll just go and buy some passion. Yeah, that doesn't work. You have to have that feeling. And it could be a passion for anything. But of course, if it's the product, as with Reebok, the passion was there. And you find that passion. Maybe if we hadn't have chosen the name Reebok, because as you know from the story, the Mercury Sports Footwear, we had passion for that, but we couldn't use it. We bumped into a problem there, and we had to find our way around it. But finding our way around it was using a dictionary that I had won when I was 8 years old during the war, and it was an American dictionary. And The odd thing about that is, why an American dictionary that'd be 1943? Why an American dictionary? And Sneakonomics, I don't know if you've, it is a podcast, as BBC are doing it. They've got 9 editions, or 9, so 45-minute episodes. And, you know, they have brought this out. Me as an 8-year-old, picking up this book and saying, well, they did swear, but more or less the Americans can't spell because the spelling is so different. But from that book, I picked up Reebok, RWBOK. And the minute we saw it, that's it. 2 syllables, great. But then, you know, you go into the business and you think, yes, I must do this. And you keep moving. And it's the passion that keeps you moving forward. It's the fact that, you know, we can, and we did. We grew a business. But when we say, is it just, you know, is passion most important? I would say without it, you can't really build a business.
Thank you. I do get where you're coming in from, but since you did mention the business piece, I must ask, I mean, coming from a long line of shoemakers, it only seemed natural that you would follow the family's footsteps. But you decided to push the horizons even further and create a brand that has become a legacy, right? And it's an incredible journey, and we will dive into that in a bit. But question for you on that note is, Joe, was there ever a point in your journey that you considered doing anything else other than following the footsteps of your family? Or was it just a singular vision, or were you actually pressured in any way to pick up that industry or pick up that trade?
Well, there was no pressure. There was no vision. I was a youngster, a teenager. The way people grow up, and you're looking around, and the world is there. I trained as an engineer. I could quite easily have gone into aerospace, but you know, I think at that point, when you're in your teens, making your mind up on the decision that this will be my future is very difficult. I did 2 years of national service, and before leaving, you have an interview, and you know, they say, well, we can put you on a path. Where would you like to be? And of course, I'd been in radar, and we had been controlling fighter jets. We've been controlling them, taking them up into to practice interceptions. So you'd get fighter jets taking a pair, and you think, well, that must be interesting. So yeah, maybe being a fighter pilot was sort of at that time. You know, it was a bit like when you're younger, being a train driver. That was always a passion when you're really young. So being a fighter jet pilot, that had its interest. But you know, it's like you almost went through a process where in the UK, World War II was over. In the 50s, the memories were still there. Things were still trying to get back to normal. And so you went through a process and did 2 years of national service. And what happened is all the friends you had before you went in national service, but 2 years later, that had dissipated. They weren't there anymore. So most of my friends, they went in at different times, came out, and just got married. And that was my story. You did this. So I was married. I married my first wife at 21. And that seemed the process. And it was only when, okay, you're married, and yeah, we'll work at the factory, we'll work at Foster's, why not? It's there. But those 2 years of national service, they sort of made you look around a bit. You know, mother's no longer making your meals. She's no longer doing your washing. You can't say, what do I do with this? There's no advice there. In fact, there's little advice. It's a matter of growing up, learning independence. And so on coming back, although I got married, and then we look at the company and we see it failing, it's at that point where you say, oh, what do we do? Just a minute. We need to do something. And obviously, we learned of my grandfather. We didn't know much about grandfather. He died before I was born. So son learning that he invented the spike track shoe, and what he did, and yet his sons, my uncle and father, they just didn't get on. They feuded. And whereas with the Adi and Rudy Dassler, they separated, it was up to us, the sons, to move away from the company. So I think that starts to make you feel, okay, we need to do something. You know, we need to have a purpose. And once you get that purpose, then that passion grows, and you can feel that, yes, this is it. And so I guess, yes, I could have been an engineer. I could have been an aerospace engineer. And I think I would have done okay. But, you know, those are big businesses. You know, these things were big. De Havilland, I mean, British Aerospace, how do you know? And I think I probably had more individual feelings of thinking, well, yeah, I can't build my own spaceship. These things, you need to grow an awful lot of business to do that. And so I think that setting out on our own, Jeff and myself, I think it was a continuation of our 2 years of national service. We'd stepped out of the family. We needed to think for ourselves. And we could do. We went to college after coming out of the forces. Went to Nike College. We learned about shoemaking. We made a lot of introductions to people that we could use, that we could call on. They were the people that helped us start Reebok. And there are stories within the book of, I could say, getting to know people, getting to have that relationship. In my book, there's a J.W. Johnson, Johnny Johnson, John Willie, we used to call him. And he was so good for us. But that's because we took the trouble to learn about the business, to get involved, so that we knew if we were going to do our own business, we needed the tools. So apart from that passion, we needed the tools. That included machinery, and it included people. And so, you know, there are layers. But then if you don't have the passion, those layers mean nothing. But yeah, I could have been an engineer.
Could I just ask about the whole technical piece? Because a lot of people do talk about the passion, but I've often looked at organizations which aren't technically sound. So the product isn't as good as it should be, simply because the technical aspects are not there. And you touched upon it, so I wanted to kind of lead you on a little bit on that. How important is that piece? Actually knowing your product inside out. The marketing everyone kind of jumps into, the branding everyone jumps into, but how important is it to actually know every single aspect of the product itself?
Well, to begin with on that one, I'm not a salesman. And not being a salesman, one thing I had to know about is my product, because we didn't have a salesman. And I decided, we'd said at J.W. Foster's, you're lacking people to sell your product, you're lacking these things, you need a plan. So I went out to sell Reebok on the road, and I called on sports retailers. And as I say, I'm not a salesman, but the one thing I knew I had to know was my product. And I could go in and I could tell anybody, they said, I've got Adidas, I've got Dunlop, why do I need Reebok? I could tell them everything about Adidas. I could tell them how Dunlop made their shoes, but I knew how we made our shoes. And people say, you know, you were artisans. No, we weren't. Well, our product was not the most beautiful product in those early days, but it was a very good product. It did work. It stood up to what was required. We knew our product all the way through. So if anybody talked to me about the product, I would tell them what was wrong with an Adidas shoe or what was wrong with this other shoe. And this is why ours is built like this. So ours was built properly, and it did the job. And we became known as the athlete shoe. We were very much in with the athletes. We talked to the athletes. We worked with athletes. So when you say knowing your product, and as we started off with Anta, passion. No, there are a lot of things you've got to put together, which sometimes you don't realize it. It's just a matter that you're, as a personality, like I say, I'm not a salesman, so I'm not talking about these. I'm not telling jokes to the buyer or whatever. I'm a serious man. I'm seriously saying, this is my product. You need to buy my product. And he would say, why do I need to buy your product? And that is also in the book, because why do I need Reebok? But yes, you're absolutely right. Knowing your product inside out, the whole thing, so that you can talk about it. So nobody can point to something and say, that's wrong. I had somebody sent me a pair of shoes, a nice product, but it was out of balance. And I'm embarrassed of the fact that they sent me this pair of shoes, beautiful product, but the balance isn't right. And that to me was, if you're going to have the best product, it needs to be absolute in every way. Nobody can tell you that this is out of balance, or it has to be perfect. And that for me is, the guy's a great seller of shoes, great product, great marketing, everything. But you just need to make sure your product is perfect.
That whole almost nitty-gritty detail of things, did that have anything to do with your engineering background, the fact that you were an engineer? And also, did that also come from a certain amount of discipline that comes from the military? Did that have anything to do with it?
Well, I think discipline is very important. And again, I can look back on life and think, now, did I understand this was happening? Or was it the good fortune that, okay, a world war, we couldn't do much travel. But in those days, in the 50s, the social life was around the church. And everything went on in the church. All the things went on, tennis, badminton, Scouts. And Jeff and I were in the Scouts organization, and we had a very good Scoutmaster. And he was very strict. He was very much teaching you things. So you learned how to, again, be self-sufficient. Then in the forces, yes, there's discipline there, but you have to learn how to handle that discipline. You have to learn to obey it, be part of it, but use it. You have to be able to use it. It's like, oh, this is. So yes, I think discipline was very, very important in both Jeff and myself and our upbringing. And we'd seen father and uncle, we'd seen how they were at each other's throats. And Jeff and I never had a bad word together. We were great friends. And it was a great loss to me when he died, when he did. He was only 47, nearly 48. And that was a great loss. But, by that time, the discipline was in the company as well.
Can I just, since you touched on it, can I just ask about it? Because one of the biggest difficulties to navigate in a business, especially a family business, is the relationship between the family members. And oftentimes, in our part of the world, when family businesses start up, we are actually warned not to involve family because it generally ends bad. So business and family doesn't mix. So you keep well away and not employ anybody. But you were partners in crime in this venture. Why did it work so well? What made it click?
Well, I think made it click was that we were two different personalities. And I was more outgoing. Jeff preferred to be more practical. And he loved working in the factory. So that was his passion. His passion was in the factory. And he loved to do that. And okay, I didn't really work in the factory. Right at the beginning, yes, I made shoes. As you do, there were two of us, I made shoes. But our destinies and the way we worked separated. And Jeff would say, you do that, you do that, you do that. And it was a matter that Jeff got on with everything in the factory. And if I did the designing, he would make that design work as a product. So, and I do think, having seen father and uncle and their work, the way they were, we recognize the fact that working together is the answer. And yet working together is not doing crossover. It was, you do that, you do that. And so I was very lucky that Jeff was so happy to work in the factory and just left me to do everything else. And so I got on with everything else, and I made mistakes. I got things wrong, but he never criticized. He was always there just to keep us. I think he realized that I was the one stepping out into the unknown every time. And when you step into the unknown, you can get it wrong. You can get things in the wrong way. But it worked. It worked very well for us. But like you say, having family, yes, we did bring a younger brother. He was 10 years younger. We brought him into, and that didn't work. That didn't work. He brought him into the factory, and Jeff couldn't get on with him at work. You know, family's family, work is another thing, and you're absolutely right. You know, work has got some different disciplines than family. You know, family's fun. Work, it's got to be as much fun as you can make of it, but it's not there to be fun. It's there to be very practical and enjoy it. So that didn't work. Yes, families, right in the early days of Reebok, the family did help. Some would come and do some, girls would do the machining and sewing the uppers together, things like that. But very soon, it was just Jeff and myself who were in the factory.
Sorry, I've just got a quick one on that, on the fact that you and your brother worked well with each other. I'm just going to take you a little bit back to if I got it right, Jeff joined in when he was 15, and I think you joined the factory when you were, or the family business when you were 17, before you went away for 2 years, right? Now, clearly, from where I heard earlier on, is that when you were in Germany, you watched the brands like, you watched the other brands like Puma and Adidas and the kind of new type of shoes they were making, what was happening in the market, and clearly that played a role. So in large part, a brand evolving is credited to its ability to sort of anticipate the actions of competitors, to be agile enough to pivot, to become innovative, to meet the customer needs, etc. My question to you, and I guess from especially the fact that it is a family business, your exposure, the fact that you and your brother were able to recognize the needs of change while you're away in service. Often entrepreneurs who take up family business, for them, the whole idea of perspectives and innovation could be restricted because everyone grows up within that mindset. It's almost like, why fix anything if it's not broken, kind of an attitude. But you both came back from the service and completely decided to look at this family business from a different perspective, and you kind of drove that forward. How would someone avoid that kind of an entrapment of the lack of exposure, for want of a better way of putting it?
Well, I think that was the advantage we had. This was a period that you go through life and certain things happen, and you happen to be there at the right time. Things happen to happen at the right time. Maybe if we hadn't had national service, we would have probably grown up within the family business and not seen the differences, the problems. And I think Jeff had been working in the factory for 4 years. 1 year in the factory before he went off to do national service. And since the business had a culture, and that culture was just really continuing what grandfather did, because he went around to events and he built his company off word of mouth, off advertising in newspapers. And the J.W. Foster business was still doing that. They hadn't developed the idea that, well, this is a business that needs a plan. We need a marketing, we need sales. In the middle of the 1950s, I don't think the word marketing was a word. It was like entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, marketing. These are sort of terms which have grown and which are now, looking at business is totally different now. What is the end game for this? We were looking for a legacy. We were looking to build a company, not when does it end, how does it end? It's forever. And yet we obviously saw that grandfather had his passion to build a business. This was just the thing moving. They didn't seem to have that passion. Now, I don't know whether that was 2 world wars They lived through World War I and World War II. Whether that took their passion away, and by the time in his in his late 40s, maybe early, and you know, at that point, to pick up and say we have a business here and we need to build it, it seemed to have gone and lost. But fortunately, Jeff and myself, we did national service, and it managed to we managed to look at life in a different way and come back. That, you know, life is an adventure. Get on with it. Making shoes, it's not like, say, baking bread or doing whatever it is where you repeat that day after day after day. You've got to have a, you know, we have to have a business, and you have to go and find a business. In the UK, we should have been in football, but and my grandfather, we have a replica of a letterhead from him in the 1920s, and he supplied with football boots and training shoes. It's about 95 different clubs. You can't name an English football club that he did not supply. Manchester United, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea. It was every club in the country he supplied. And I've often wondered, what happened? This was in the 1920s. Bolton Wanderers won the FA Cup 3 times in the 1920s. Did he supply them with the football boots? What happened between the end of the 1920s and when he died in 1933 to when we came into the scene? Where did his sons not see the vision? Why did they not pick up on that vision? So there was a gap. That passion, the ability to grow a company and know where to take it, failed for 20 years, maybe more, from 1933 to 1955, when Jeff and I came out of the fort. They were still making those shoes, as you said. They were still back in the 1930s. So, you know, you got to say, well, what is it that drives a company forward? Why do you see these things? You know, is it family? What is it? What happened? We did national service. We got that individual. So maybe it was lucky that we did national service. Maybe that just changed our minds that little bit, that we had to look after ourselves. And this applied when we came back to a company. We had to look after this. We had to grow something. We had to develop it. So families are difficult, the passion, the reasons why you do things. And I think this isn't a plan. I didn't plan this when I was born in 1935. You know, planning came into business in 1955 when we saw that we'd gone through life, as children do, as you know, teenagers do. You go through life with what's around you, and whether you have the vision to build. Although I must admit that I have had a meeting and a discussion with somebody who started his own business when he was 14. But then it was a different age, different timing, and different technology. We didn't have this technology. We didn't have computers. We didn't have mobile phones. I was lucky if I had a calculator, and that was it. Apart from that, it was a handful of American Express travelers checks, and jump on an airplane and go there, go and experience. So life is so different today.
Of course, and I can't help but ask this of you, given the fact that you grew up in that era. When the business grew, and it grew exponentially, it wasn't a small growth. It was, I mean, generally businesses have a very steady growth. It isn't normal for a business to have exponential growth. When it did, it also, I've often found that it takes a toll. It's not easy to manage that. It's not, you know, if it was business as usual, it's 10%, 20% growth year on year, profitability margins are fine, and it sails on. But when you have exponential growth, the challenges you face are much more different. Did it have a toll on you?
Well, this all happened in America. I took 11 years to get to America. I started off in 1968 at the NSGA show in Chicago. And it was 1979 before I met Paul Fireman, and we managed to get the product onto the market. We managed to get that because we found the hook. We found something. You know, when you're trying to push, it's difficult. when something starts pulling you, it's different. So you have to get that hook. Suddenly we wanted people needed, as my first experiences going to retailers, and they're saying, why do I need Reebok? He didn't need Reebok. The athletes needed Reebok, or we thought it did. Getting the athletes to wear Reebok made that retailer understand that he needed to have Reebok because the athletes wanted Reebok. Same in America. And we were there at the right time, right during the 70s. As I say, I spent 11 years from 68 to 79. And during the 70s, running in America grew exponentially. That grew really fast. And Runner's World magazine was at the heart of that. So was Nike. And Runner's World magazine became a full color magazine where they were telling the runners what shoes to buy. And they started to give shoes a star rating. And when they decided they would excuse me, give it a star rating, I knew very well I could make a 5-star shoe. As you say, you've got to know your product. We knew our product. And building a 5-star shoe, a bit of a risk, but we knew exactly what was needed in a 5-star shoe. And we built a 5-star shoe, and that gave us the pull. That gave it the demand from the Americans. They wanted that shoe. So that got us into America, which is great. And we were growing nicely. But it was Arnold Martinez down in California, excuse me, down in Los Angeles. He saw this aerobics. Well, his wife did. His wife was going to aerobic classes, coming back, and she's full of it, really great. And Arnold saying, what's aerobics? Well, we're actually exercising the music. Fantastic. So what was the difference? The difference was that the shoe that we made for that, the freestyle, the women just loved it. They didn't just use it for aerobics. Excuse me. They used it. They went to work in it. They went out in it, they enjoyed it. So it became street. All of a sudden it came. So Reebok, from being this athletics company, became a women's company because that was where it exploded. Women didn't have a sports shoe. Adidas, Nike, they were male, sweaty. Reebok, all of a sudden, this beautiful little shoe. It's so different, excuse me. They were so different and so soft, glove leather. So this took us onto street and took us as a woman's company. And that just exploded. And we were in the right place. We were in Hollywood. And Jane Fonda started wearing these in her videos. So all of a sudden, we moved from a company having to sell shoes to a company having to supply a market demand. And for a good 5 or 6 years, that market demand was immense. It was incredible. I mean, I remember sitting with Paul, and Paul saying, Joe, I know how to stop this, but I don't know how to start it again. Yeah. And so we were not a company needing to build a plan, seek, how do we sell, how do we develop? No, it was how do we keep up? First problem, how do you finance it? Stephen Rubin answered that. That was good. He would give us sourcing from the Far East and he would give a credit line. Brilliant. That was okay. But, you know, we went from 9 million to 30 million to 90 million, 300 million to $900 million turnover. And how do you get from 300 million to 900 million in 12 months? It's not the money. The money wasn't the problem. Production. How do you get the product? Fortunately, Nike had just found themselves in trouble and their sales were dropping and they came out of 2 or 3 factories. So the timing, we were there needing that production and suddenly came. So yes, there are different problems. It is not a question of, you know, building sales, doing, no, the problem was totally different. And I think it probably didn't do the company that good because I think we didn't build, as you said, nice and steady. You know, we didn't get the roots in there to build that company. So we got to 4 billion and still chasing the product, not the business. We're still trying to keep up. So that was a big difference. And so that exponential growth really was massive, was incredible, but it took its toll in a different way. You're finding people who can fill boxes. You're finding people who can make the product. How do you build it? And then when it comes to the fact that you've got to say, well, now we've got to start developing sales. You're a bit on the back foot. And although the company did, I left the company in 1989 when we were #1. We'd overtaken Nike, overtaken Adidas, but I think 60% of our sales were aerobics. And it's like anything that's dangerous.
True. And did it affect you personally? The hours that you had to put in, the pressure that was needed to be taken. It was just you and your brother. Did it affect you personally to be able to keep up?
My brother had died in 1980, and that's just when we started in America.
Okay.
So I knew that to develop this, we needed the Americans to develop it. So this was Paul Fireman. And so Paul Fireman and his American and the business over there, they were providing this product. They had to. I was doing, well, put it this way, there's not room for a man from the UK to be in America. This is for America. They know the business. The beautiful thing about Paul Fireman is American. And one of the bad things about, say, Nike, when they started to go global, they sent Americans to take on do the job. And you didn't need Americans. What you needed was the local man. You know, you could think globally, but you've got to act locally. The local man knows the culture, the little influences. I mean, right, America was the big influence. So I was traveling around the world in those days. I was on planes and I was putting on markets. Yeah, and I put about 30 different distributors on. So I was slightly removed from the chase for getting product. I was that slightly removed from it. The chase had to be direct. They didn't need to come through me. You know, but the worst thing that could have happened was America was asking the UK to go to Korea or wherever it was to get the product, and then we would do. No, we short-circuited that. We brought it together and said, America, you go direct. That way you've got better control. You'll be able to do things better. And to be honest, that worked. That really worked. However, as I say, finding Paul Fireman was a great thing for the business. But at the end, Paul couldn't find somebody to take on the next step, because the next step was building yourself into a performance company and doing the things that Adidas and Nike did. But that happened in the 2000s. My story is the growth, the start, the build of Reebok, and getting it to America, and then building the global distribution, which was fantastic. But for me, I was probably lucky. I was probably enjoying it more than Paul Fireman was.
Is it tough though to let it go?
I think things are different today. I think you're able to call on more things today, financially and different other things you're able to bring into your company. For me, it was a matter that there was opportunity for the company to grow. There was opportunity. But for me to be in the way, it was wrong. There was time. And it worked. The company grew to become #1. So I think for me, it was time to let it go. And
but isn't it personal though? You built it up.
It is personal. What are we talking about? Today, I'm the founder, still the founder. You can't remove a founder. You can't remove that. What built it? What were the roots? You can remove everybody else from your company, but you can't change the founder. So you've always got possession.
True.
And that possession is priceless. It's something that.
I agree. But can I probe a little, because this is actually one of the biggest challenges we have, certainly in our part of the world. Founders don't let go. They really don't. there's this wonderful saying that if you're not part of the solution, you're actually part of the problem. And it's true for the most part, but I also appreciate the fact that when you've started something and you've grown something, there are certain aspects of the business that you would like to retain in a certain way. And that's only possible if you're there personally, because values change, the way the business is run changes soon as you leave it. And I guess that's normal. So I'm very curious, how, emotionally though, wasn't there a hook, as you would put it? Wasn't there a pull to always be there?
Well, of course it is. But, you know, you have to make a decision. And the decision is, do you take the company down because nobody else has the, not just the energy, but the feeling that they belong? You know, people who have ownership have that belong, put more effort in. Yeah, I could only put so much effort in. You need then to get other people to put that effort in. And that can only come in many people if they haven't founded a company, maybe ownership, maybe taking on the shares. Yeah, but Paul Fireman is now retired, and yeah, people talk to him about what he did. Stephen Rubin, he's retired. Not many people talk to Stephen about what he did then. He is big with JD Sports and other things. He's got many things on. But people are talking to me because I wrote a book. And that book has brought an awful lot of people to say, wow, yeah, because where do these things begin? You know, it's like the source of a river, you know, a river, a mighty river, but where did it begin? And you've got to go a long way. But that source is still that source and will always be the source. So for me, it is, I know how we started Reebok. I have that vision. I can see those things. That first factory, that start, the Jadwood Fosters, and so I needed to tell that story because I'd been looking at Google and Wikipedia and things like this, and you put in Reebok and it tells you all sorts of things. In fact, they have a photograph in there of Joe Foster. I think it's in Wikipedia. And I have no idea who he is. No idea what that photograph is, where he's come from. I have no idea. So I thought, write a book, put it down. And that people are interested in how these things begin. You know, when things get so big, what point do you touch on? I mean, everything's gets so large. But the name is still Reebok. It's still 6 letters. It's still 2 syllables. And you look at that, you don't worry about the side. You think, wow, Reebok. So Reebok is 125 years old, or the family is. The family business is 125 years. And there's a lot of things in that. And that came into the book. And a lot of people now look at that and read the book and think, wow, you know, what kept you going? Why didn't you stop when things were really, really tough? Well, that is the passion. That's the enthusiasm. And now, you know, yes, I'm still the founder. People talk to me.
I know Anton's itching to ask about the book, but I do have one last question before I pass it on to him. When you're that busy, retirement can be difficult. How have you adjusted and what do you do in retirement?
Well, I thought it was very good to get up. I was at 35,000 feet probably most of every week, traveling to different places. I'd be picked up by a limousine. I'd go to the best hotels. We dine at the best restaurants. Are you living a life? I don't think so. And I felt that, yeah, I may have visited all these places in the world and seen some wonderful places and done some wonderful things, but I've not walked down the street and sort of stopped and sat and had a look at the scenery. Or, you know, it's those sorts of things. We normally travel. We're in Europe now, and normally we're driving through Europe. And I would go to Munich, to Bavaria, and we'd look at Bavaria now with Richard Little, who was our Geschäftsführer in Germany, or I would go to Italy, go to Sacramonte, and we stayed with the Sacramonte just outside Milan, Varese, and you could see all these beautiful lakes and nice glass of wine. And you sit there and have a chat with Umberto, who was a man in this way. So, yeah, that was enjoying the things that I've done, the places, what we'd built. I can now go around, see these people, we sit down and we enjoy the scenery, we enjoy the life. So it's enjoying life. So England is damp, wet and cold, usually. Sri Lanka is warm.
Yes.
And, you know, it's nice.
For us, for sure.
As those bones get a bit older, you know, and they creak a bit, oh, it's nice to have that sunshine, a bit of warmth. Yeah, and that relaxation, that time to talk, not just about how many more shoes are we going to sell, but, wow, isn't it nice? This, yeah, what did you do yesterday? Where should we go tomorrow? Yeah, that's the retirement. But, you know, I'm busier than ever. I do half a dozen of these interviews a week now. And and now the ambition back, the passion's back to get that book, Shoemaker, to #1, a bestseller.
Sure.
Why not? You know, so the passion's still there. It's just we've moved over. Let's enjoy our lives a bit. And so that when I travel now, I travel and I can meet people and we just sit down, relax and enjoy.
Absolutely. I'm going to, at that point, I'm going to pass it on to Anton because he does have something. Yes.
No. I was listening in, and clearly, when you're talking about the life before your retirement and the life now, I kind of recollect some of the stories that I heard when you and your brother sort of broke away and went with your wives to set up this factory. Another story was that there was a rundown factory and you kind of very carefully placed the machinery in corners and not in the center so that the roof doesn't collapse. And it was a struggle. It wasn't an easy life. You never folded. Now, the victories were clearly hard won. And I guess the question that I have for you is how important it is to have that support network of family, of friends. You know, because they struggled with you as much as you did, and did you feel bad about the struggle that they went through, and kind of did they keep you accountable, or was it a case of where that whole situation kept you accountable? What was that like?
I don't think accountability came into it. I think it was purely and simply, we've got to do something. And I was 23, Jeff was 25. We were young, we were indestructible. You know, what can go wrong? It's pure and simply, you just go for it. Pure, simply, well, okay, why not? This isn't working. This will. And so you have a belief in yourselves. You believe that you can do this. Yes, maybe we put our wives through something that maybe we shouldn't, but again, they were young. There was no reason that they should expect to have certain things. No, and you say it's a struggle. What is a struggle? Yeah. I think the biggest struggle is when you have nothing to do and you're in despair because you don't know where to go. That to me is the struggle. It's when you've got something, and yes, you know, you can see a dozen steps ahead, and you've got to take them one at a time. You've got to get on with it. If you have nothing to get on with, I would see that is a problem. Not when you, it's tough, but we didn't expect things easy. If we'd have had things easy at that time of life, maybe we wouldn't have made Reebok. Maybe it would have been, you need that bit of grit. You need that bit of having to push your way through things, having to struggle. That makes it more determination comes there. The passion starts to come there as well. So all these things, really, it's what builds you. It's what makes you. And so I don't think there was anybody looking at each other and saying, you've got to do this right, you've got to do that right, or, what are you doing this for? That came later. That came later. But and yes, you know, those decisions. I was, when I started traveling a lot. You know, this is like, how do you stop that? And this is where relationships become more pressurized when you're all in there banging away, just having to date those first steps. No, that was not the pressure. That would, you know, you can look back and that's the fun. You know, that's the fun. Maybe sometimes at the time you're thinking, oh my God, what? But you know, that was the fun. And that's probably one of the reasons why I left the company when I did. You know, I was, what was I doing? It was nothing. You know, the company got to a size now when it was just a big one. It was rolling along. It was, you know, it didn't need my individual efforts and inputs. I'd achieved. I'd got to my levels. The rest was for people who wanted to work within that sort of environment. And so I was much better off when it was a small company. I had much more, well, I had input, as you had to have input. When it gets big, no, you don't have the input. You've got a dozen lawyers, a dozen accountants. You've got so many other people in the middle who can fill boxes. So, you know, no, it wasn't that much of a struggle. Hello, I've gone down to something here, dear. I've gone down to a picture of Shoemaker. Oh, I'm back again. Oh. I lost you then for a moment. I don't know where you gone. So yeah, so business, yes. Being tough builds your strength, builds your character.
Right. So thank you for that, Joe. Just very quickly while you're on the line, Joe Foster's entrepreneurial journey is nothing short of inspiring, as he took the company through ups and downs, broke into competitive markets, created a niche in the market for this unique brand. Acquired by Adidas in 2005 for a whopping 3.8 billion, Joe Foster has since retired and authored a book, which you see now on the screen, Shoemaker, the untold story of the British family firm that became a global brand. His book, Shoemaker, the paperback, is launching on the 10th of June. So do follow our link so you would know where to get a copy for yourself. Joe, it's truly an exciting journey, and it is indeed an exciting one for us to know that you've kind of recorded your entrepreneurial journey so that everyone has much to learn from this inspirational story or tale, right? So before we leave, and just do leave us with a nugget of advice for all aspiring entrepreneurs out there. Your thoughts, your words of wisdom.
I don't have too many because there are a lot of words of wisdom. You can read them, and now we have this, they're all over. What I would say is, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to be young. Being young means you've no fear. And so you can go with an idea. And if you have an idea, don't listen to too much advice. Listen to yourself. Listen to the fact that you like to do it. You know, if you fail, it doesn't matter. It's a step on the road. It's something you've learned. You won't learn it from other people. You'll only learn it from yourself. So young, if you've got the enthusiasm, you feel you should do something, really, go ahead. Take that step and don't listen to too many people.
Well, thank you for that. And they say all good things must come to an end. And sadly, so does this conversation. So thank you, Joe, so much for carving out a moment in time from your undoubtedly busy schedule. I can honestly say that this hour has been a thrilling ride. What a story, and certainly an amazing takeaway of absolutely pure inspiration. So do watch our social media spaces for the links to join in. Do visit our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit that notification button to stay updated, and remember to share. With this, I bid you a wonderful rest of the day. Stay safe, stay productive,